In the spring of 1903, a steamship cut through the Atlantic waters between Antwerp and Baltimore. The vessel was called the SS Oceana. It was an era of mass migration, when millions crossed the ocean seeking new lives. Ships like the Oceana were the lifelines of this movement, carrying people, goods, and mail across vast distances. The turn of the century was a time of industrial expansion, of steel and steam, of nations competing for power and influence. Against this backdrop, the Oceana made what seemed like an ordinary voyage. Its manifest recorded 40 passengers aboard. For more than a century, this document sat in archives, just one among thousands of similar records from that era. Then modern historians began to look closer. What they found was impossible. The 40 passengers listed on that manifest were not what they seemed. The discovery would reveal a complex operation hidden in plain sight for over 120 years. This is the story of how a routine shipping document became evidence of something far more calculated. The SS Oceana was owned by a company known in shipping records as the Red Star Maritime Line. It was not a luxury liner. There were no grand ballrooms or fine dining halls aboard this vessel. The Oceana was a workhorse ship, built for cargo and practicality. Its typical runs carried textiles from European factories, industrial machinery bound for American plants, and sacks of mail connecting two continents. The ship made regular crossings, and its crews knew the Atlantic routes well. It was the kind of vessel that kept the wheels of commerce turning, unremarkable in every way except for what happened on one particular voyage. The discovery began in a university archive. Max, a maritime historian specializing in early 20th century shipping, was researching immigration patterns when he encountered the Oceana Manifest. At first glance, it appeared routine. The document listed 40 passengers by name, age, and stated occupation. The handwriting was clear, the format standard for the time. But something made Max pause. He decided to cross-reference the names with other records. This is where Charlie entered the investigation. Charlie worked as a digital archivist, someone who specialized in connecting historical documents using modern database technology. When Max brought the manifest to Charlie's attention, they began a systematic search. The 40 names were run through immigration databases. They were checked against census records from both Europe and America. Birth certificates were searched. Death records were examined. Ship arrival logs at Baltimore were reviewed. The result was striking. Not a single name matched. None of the 40 passengers appeared in any other historical record. They had not been processed through immigration stations in Baltimore. There were no birth records for them in European archives. They had left no trace in census data. It was as if these 40 people had never existed at all. They were ghosts on paper. This absence created the first major question. Why would a ship's manifest contain 40 completely fabricated identities? Max considered several possibilities. Perhaps they were refugees traveling under assumed names to escape persecution. This was not uncommon in 1903, when political tensions ran high across Europe. But even refugees using false names would have been processed upon arrival. Immigration officials would have recorded something, even if the names were invented. These 40 passengers left no trace whatsoever in the arrival records at Baltimore. The investigation turned to the ship's captain. His name in the records was Felix. Archived materials from the Red Star Maritime Line included personal journals kept by their captains during voyages. These logs were routine documents, recording weather conditions, mechanical issues, notable events, and passenger concerns. Felix's journal from the Oceana's 1903 voyage was located and examined. It contained daily entries about wind conditions, a minor engine repair, and notes about cargo handling. But there was something absent. Felix never once mentioned the 40 passengers in his private journal. Not a single reference to boarding procedures, passenger complaints, or the human cargo supposedly filling his manifest. For weeks, the investigation seemed to reach a dead end. Then, Charlie decided to examine a different type of document. Instead of focusing on passenger records, Charlie pulled the cargo manifest for the same voyage. The cargo manifest listed the expected items: bales of Belgian linen, crates of machine parts, barrels of industrial chemicals, and standard mail shipments. Everything appeared normal, but Charlie did not stop there. Buried in the ship's expense ledger was another entry. It was labeled simply as payment for special handling of 40 consignment crates. The number was exact: 40 passengers on the passenger manifest, 40 crates in the expense ledger. The connection was too precise to be coincidence. Max analyzed this new evidence carefully. The 40 crates were not listed on the main cargo manifest, the document that customs officials would have reviewed upon arrival. They were hidden from the official record. Only the internal expense ledger, a document meant for the shipping company's accounting purposes, contained any reference to them. The ledger showed something else. The crates were loaded at night, just hours before the Oceana departed from Antwerp. Night loading was unusual. Standard cargo was typically loaded during daylight hours when dock workers and inspectors could clearly see what was being moved. The weight displacement records provided more evidence. Every ship kept records of its weight distribution to ensure safe sailing. The Oceana's displacement records showed the vessel was significantly heavier than its declared cargo would account for. The math did not align. The listed goods on the official manifest could not produce the recorded weight. Something substantial was aboard that ship, something not included in the paperwork presented to authorities. The special handling fee was enormous. The amount paid to the Red Star Maritime Line for transporting these undeclared crates was far beyond what ordinary cargo would cost. The payment came from an unknown third party, not from the usual commercial shipping customers. The money changed hands through a complex series of financial intermediaries, making it difficult to trace the original source. This raised a second major question: what could possibly be in those crates? Max and Charlie began researching the political and industrial climate of 1903. Europe was experiencing rising tensions. The great powers were locked in a naval arms race, building bigger and more powerful warships. Industrial espionage was a real concern. Nations and companies competed fiercely for technological advantages. A new alloy, an improved engine design, or advanced optical equipment could provide a crucial edge. The historians found payment records that linked the Red Star Maritime Line to a German industrial firm called Rhineland Engineering Works. This company was a known supplier to the Imperial German Navy. They manufactured precision instruments, advanced steel components, and optical equipment for naval rangefinders. The connection was documented in multiple financial records from the period. Kingston, a researcher who specialized in industrial history, confirmed that Rhineland Engineering Works had been under investigation by British intelligence during this exact time period for suspected technology transfers. A theory began to form. The 40 crates contained sensitive military or industrial technology. Perhaps they held high-grade steel components for shipbuilding. Maybe they contained advanced optical lenses that would give naval gunners better accuracy. They could have held detailed engineering schematics, the kind of proprietary information that companies and governments would pay dearly to obtain. The evidence suggested that the Oceana was engaged in smuggling, transporting materials that could not pass through normal customs channels. Additional archival work by Judah, who studied European manufacturing records, revealed something more. Rhineland Engineering Works had filed a patent in 1902 for an improved naval gun sight. The patent was granted in Germany but never filed in other countries. This was unusual for valuable technology. Companies typically sought international patent protection. The absence suggested the technology was being kept secret, possibly for military advantage. The timing aligned perfectly with the Oceana's voyage. Antonio, an expert in early 20th century trade law, explained the restrictions that existed in 1903. Certain military technologies were subject to export controls even then. Moving advanced optical equipment or weapons components across borders required official permits. These permits created paper trails that intelligence services could monitor. For someone trying to transfer technology secretly, avoiding the permit process was essential, but doing so meant finding alternative shipping methods. The more the researchers dug, the more complex the operation appeared. Annie, who worked with naval archives, found references to American naval intelligence reports from 1904. These reports mentioned concerns about German technological advances in fire control systems. The reports noted that German rangefinders had shown unexpected improvements, suggesting access to new optical grinding techniques. The source of these improvements was unknown, but the timing was suspicious. Daphne reviewed customs records from multiple ports. She found a pattern. Ships owned by the Red Star Maritime Line had been flagged multiple times between 1901 and 1905 for manifest discrepancies. In each case, passenger counts did not match inspection results. In some instances, cargo weights exceeded declarations, but no serious investigations resulted. The discrepancies were noted and dismissed as clerical errors. The Red Star Maritime Line paid small fines and continued operations. This pattern suggested the Oceana incident was not isolated. It appeared to be part of a systematic approach. The company had refined a method for moving restricted materials. They had learned how to exploit weaknesses in the inspection system. Each voyage provided lessons that improved the next operation. But the central mystery remained. Why create 40 fake passengers? Why not simply hide the crates among legitimate cargo? The answer required understanding how port inspections actually worked in 1903. Ada, a specialist in immigration history, explained the process. When a ship arrived claiming to carry passengers, immigration officials had a legal obligation to account for every person listed. This took priority over cargo inspection. The logic was clear. Human beings required immediate attention. They needed health screenings to prevent disease outbreaks. They needed documentation checks to enforce immigration laws. They could not simply be left aboard ship while officials dealt with cargo. Cargo inspection, by contrast, was more flexible. Customs officials spot-checked goods based on declared contents and available time. With dozens of ships arriving weekly, thorough inspection of every crate was impossible. Officials focused on high-value goods, suspicious shipments, and random sampling. Routine industrial cargo received minimal scrutiny. The genius of the plan became clear. By declaring 40 passengers, the Oceana's operators guaranteed that immigration officials would board immediately and begin searching. These officials had no responsibility for cargo. That was the Customs Department's job. But customs officials had to wait their turn. Immigration processing took precedence. While immigration inspectors searched the ship for passengers who did not exist, while they examined passenger quarters and questioned crew members, the cargo operation proceeded separately. Customs officials, when they finally boarded, found themselves under time pressure. Other ships were waiting. The immigration team had already spent hours on what appeared to be a paperwork error. The pressure was to clear the ship quickly and move to the next vessel. The 40 crates, labeled as machine parts or industrial components, could be quickly inspected. A customs official might open one or two randomly. Finding the declared contents or something that looked plausible, they would stamp the paperwork and approve offloading. The special handling fee, paid to expedite the process, ensured dock workers moved the crates quickly to waiting transport. Adeline, who studied bureaucratic systems, noted how well this exploited human psychology. Officials who had just wasted hours on a passenger manifest error would be frustrated and eager to move on. They would be less likely to conduct thorough additional inspections. The fake passengers created mental fatigue and time pressure, both of which reduced scrutiny of the cargo. The method also provided perfect cover if questions arose later. If authorities ever investigated the cargo, the shipping company could claim they had been focused on resolving the passenger manifest error. Any oversight could be attributed to the confusion caused by that discrepancy. The fake passengers became an explanation for why normal procedures might have been rushed. Documents from Baltimore Customs records support this interpretation. There is a notation in the Oceana's arrival file noting discrepancies with the passenger manifest. The inspector wrote that passengers could not be located for processing, but there is no indication that this discrepancy led to any investigation of the cargo. The matter was noted and then apparently forgotten. The ship was cleared to unload. The Red Star maritime line was not fined or sanctioned. Ariana found similar patterns in records from other ports. Ships with passenger discrepancies rarely faced serious consequences. The bureaucratic system treated such issues as administrative problems, not potential indicators of smuggling. This blind spot was exactly what the operation exploited. The question of who ultimately received the smuggled technology remained difficult to answer. The financial trail disappeared into a web of intermediary companies and banking transactions. But Ariella, who specialized in industrial espionage history, found circumstantial evidence. German naval vessels launched between 1904 and 1906 showed marked improvements in gunnery accuracy. British naval intelligence reports expressed concern about these advances. The technology appeared suddenly, without the gradual development that typically preceded such improvements. The timing suggested the Oceana's cargo had reached its intended destination. Whatever was in those 40 crates had been successfully delivered and put to use. The operation had worked exactly as planned. What makes this case remarkable is the sophistication of the method. It required detailed knowledge of port procedures, understanding of bureaucratic psychology, and careful coordination between multiple parties. Someone had studied the system thoroughly and identified its exact vulnerabilities. The fake passenger manifest was not a crude deception. It was a precisely calculated tool designed to manipulate how officials allocated their limited time and attention. The case also reveals how gaps in historical records can be as revealing as the records themselves. The absence of the 40 passengers from all other documentation was not an accident or a mystery. It was the entire point. The names existed only to serve a specific purpose on one specific document. Once that purpose was fulfilled, the names disappeared because they were never meant to exist beyond that single manifest. Modern research techniques made this discovery possible. Without digital databases and systematic cross-referencing, the pattern would never have emerged. The Oceana Manifest would have remained just another old document. The absence of the passengers in other records might never have been noticed. It was only through comparing thousands of records that the anomaly became visible. This raises important questions about historical research. How many other documents contain similar hidden layers? How many operations from the past remain undetected because we have not yet asked the right questions? Archives hold millions of documents from the early 20th century. Most have never been subjected to the kind of systematic analysis that revealed the Oceana's secret. The story also illustrates how history is often hidden in mundane paperwork. Ship manifests, expense ledgers, and customs forms seem boring compared to dramatic historical events. But these everyday documents reveal how the world actually worked. They show the practical methods people used to accomplish goals, legal or otherwise. The Oceana Manifest is not a record of a famous event. It is evidence of how skilled operators could move restricted materials across international borders in an era of limited surveillance and overwhelmed officials. For researchers like Max and Charlie, the discovery opened new avenues of investigation. If the Red Star Maritime Line used this method successfully, other shipping companies might have done the same. The technique was elegant and effective. It would be surprising if others had not copied it or developed similar approaches. Future research may reveal a much larger network of technology transfer than currently recognized. The 1903 voyage of the SS Oceana demonstrates that historical investigation is never truly complete. Each generation of researchers brings new tools and perspectives. What previous historians could not see becomes visible through modern analysis. The 40 ghost passengers were hiding in plain sight for over a century, waiting for someone to notice their absence from every record except one.